Commander Sarah Chen stood in front of the main screen on the bridge of the UES Defiance. The ship had just finished the longest hyperspace jump in human history. Her crew was tired, and she could see the worry in their eyes. They had been traveling for 3 months to reach the Kepler 442 star system. This was where humanity had built its farthest colony from Earth. The mission seemed simple when they started. The colony had stopped sending messages 6 months ago. All communication had just stopped. No distress calls, no final messages, nothing. One day they were sending their weekly reports about mining operations and new settlements. The next day, silence. Earth's government had sent the Defiance to find out what happened. The ship was humanity's newest and strongest warship. It carried the best weapons and shields that human technology could build. Chen had commanded smaller ships before, but this was her first time leading such an important mission. "Report," Chen said to her navigation officer. Lieutenant Torres looked at his instruments with a confused expression. "Commander, something is very wrong here. The star system, it doesn't match our records." Chen walked over to look at the screen showing their location. What she saw made no sense. The star system they had arrived in looked nothing like the one in their files. The planets were in the wrong places. Instead of 8 planets orbiting the star in normal paths, there were 12 objects moving in perfect geometric patterns. "Are we in the right system?" Chen asked. "Yes, Commander. The star's signature matches perfectly. But everything else—" Torres stopped talking and pointed at the screen. The objects orbiting the star were not natural planets. They were perfect spheres, cubes, and other geometric shapes. Each one was exactly the same distance from its neighbors. They moved in patterns that looked like they were drawn with a ruler. Between the planets, huge structures floated in space. These structures were bigger than Earth's moon and shaped like complex mathematical symbols. "What happened to the colony?" asked Dr. Martinez, the ship's science officer. She was studying the readings from their sensors. "I'm not detecting any human settlements or ships." Chen felt a cold feeling in her stomach. The colony had housed over 50,000 people. Families, scientists, miners, engineers. They couldn't just disappear. "Run a full sensor sweep," Chen ordered. "Look for any signs of human technology or life." The crew worked quietly for several minutes. The only sounds on the bridge were the soft beeps of computers and the low hum of the ship's engines. Chen watched the geometric shapes on the screen and tried to understand what she was seeing. "Commander," called Ensign Park from the communication station, "I'm picking up some kind of energy pattern. It's not like anything in our databases." "Put it on the speakers," Chen said. A low, rhythmic sound filled the bridge. It wasn't music or voices. It sounded like a heartbeat made of electricity and light. The pattern repeated every 30 seconds, and with each repetition it seemed to get slightly stronger. "It's coming from those structures," Dr. Martinez reported. "The energy signature is—" "Commander, this technology is so advanced that our computers can't even classify it properly. Our sensors are reading it as both artificial and natural at the same time." Chen studied the tactical display. Her training had prepared her for many situations: hostile aliens, equipment failures, natural disasters. But this was something completely different. The geometric perfection of everything in the system felt wrong. It was too ordered, too perfect. "Any signs of the colony?" she asked again. "Negative, Commander. But—" Dr. Martinez paused. "I am detecting organic compounds mixed into those structures. Carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, the same elements that make up human bodies." The bridge became very quiet. Chen felt her crew looking at her, waiting for orders. She had led them into something that none of them understood. "Could the colonists have built these structures?" asked Lieutenant Torres. "Impossible," Dr. Martinez replied. "The technology required would be thousands of years ahead of anything humans can do. Besides, the structures show signs of being very old, maybe millions of years old." Chen walked back to her command chair. She needed to make a decision. They could leave immediately and report back to Earth. That would be the safe choice. But 50,000 humans were missing, and she needed to know what happened to them. "Take us closer to the nearest structure," she ordered. "But keep our shields up and weapons ready." "Commander," said her tactical officer, "should I charge the main guns?" Chen thought about this. If they were dealing with technology this advanced, their weapons might not make any difference, but having them ready might give her crew confidence. "Yes, but don't target anything unless I give the order." As the Defiance moved closer to one of the geometric structures, more details became visible. The surface was smooth like glass, but seemed to contain swirling patterns of light. The patterns moved slowly, like liquid metal flowing through transparent tubes. "I'm detecting movement inside the structure," Dr. Martinez reported. "Something is alive in there." Chen leaned forward in her chair. "Human?" "I can't tell. The readings are strange. It's like looking at life through a filter that changes what you see." The heartbeat sound from the speakers grew louder. With each pulse, the lights in the structure grew brighter. Chen realized that the sound and the lights were connected. The entire system was like one giant organism, breathing and pulsing with life. "Commander," Ensign Park called out with excitement in his voice, "I'm receiving a transmission. It's not using any known communication protocol." "What kind of transmission?" "It's not radio waves or any electromagnetic signal. It's like something is writing messages directly into our computer systems." Chen felt alarm. "Shut down all external connections immediately." "I can't, Commander. The message isn't coming through. Our antennas. It's just appearing in our computers." Dr. Martinez looked up from her station with wide eyes. "Commander, the transmission, it's not trying to communicate with us using language. It's showing us images, pictures that form directly in our minds." Chen was about to ask what kind of images when she suddenly saw them herself. In her mind, clear as if she was watching a movie, she saw the Kepler 442 system as it used to be. The normal planets, the human colony, the mining stations. Then she saw something arriving. Ships that looked like they were grown instead of built. Ships that changed the very fabric of space around them. She saw the colonists trying to resist, then trying to run, but there was nowhere to go. The alien ships surrounded the entire system. Then came the transformation. The planets were moved into new positions. The structures were built. And the humans. The vision ended suddenly, leaving Chen gasping. She looked around and saw that her entire crew had experienced the same thing. They all looked shocked and frightened. "What were those things?" Torres whispered. Before anyone could answer, new shapes appeared on their sensors. Massive vessels were emerging from behind the geometric structures. These ships were even larger than the structures themselves. They moved toward the Defiance, slowly, like predators approaching prey. Chen gripped the arms of her command chair. Whatever had happened to the colony was about to happen to them. The familiar universe she had known her entire life was gone. In its place was something that followed rules she didn't understand. "All hands to battle stations," she announced over the ship's communication system. "This is not a drill." The crew moved quickly to prepare for whatever was coming. But deep, in her heart, Chen knew that their weapons and shields might not be enough. They were dealing with something that could reshape entire star systems. The heartbeat sound grew louder, and the geometric structures began to pulse with brighter light. Something was waking up, and it had noticed the small human ship that had entered its perfect domain. The alien ships moved like they were swimming through space instead of flying. Chen watched them approach on the main screen. Each vessel was the size of a small city, but they had no visible engines or weapons. Their hulls looked like they were made from captured starlight, shifting between transparent and solid with each movement. "Distance to the lead ship?" Chen asked. 200,000 kilometers and closing," reported Lieutenant Torres. "Commander, their approach speed keeps changing. It's like they're not bound by normal physics. Chen opened a communication channel. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earth Ship Defiance. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. For several long minutes, there was no response. The alien ships continued their approach. Chen was about to repeat her message when something extraordinary happened. The space in front of the main screen began to shimmer and change. Matter appeared from nothing, forming shapes and patterns that shifted like living art. They're not using radio or any normal communication, Dr. Martinez said with wonder in her voice. They're creating physical objects to talk to us. The floating shapes arranged themselves into pictures. Chen saw images of galaxies, stars, and planets. Then, the images changed to show the same cosmic objects, but organized differently. The chaos of natural space was replaced with perfect geometric order. Planets moved in mathematical patterns. Stars burned in coordinated rhythms. I think they're showing us their purpose, Dr. Martinez whispered. They organize things. They make order from chaos. The images shifted again. Now they showed biological life forms. Plants, animals, and creatures that looked like they might be intelligent. But in the next image, these life forms were gone. In their place were perfect crystal structures that pulsed with the same rhythm as the heartbeat sound. Chen felt sick to her stomach. They're showing us what they do to living things. New images appeared. These showed the Kepler 442 colony as it had been. Chen recognized the mining facilities and residential areas where families had lived. Then the images showed the transformation. The colonists didn't die. Instead, they were absorbed into the crystal structures. Their bodies became part of something larger, their minds connected to a vast network. Commander, Ensign Park called out, the alien ships are sending another type of signal. This one is different. What kind of signal? It's like they're scanning our brains directly. I can feel something touching my thoughts. Chen experienced the sensation herself. It was like having someone gently probe her memories. The touch was not violent or painful, but it was deeply disturbing. Something alien was looking through her mind, examining her thoughts and feelings. Then, suddenly, communication became clear, not through words or sounds, but through direct understanding. The aliens called themselves the architects. They had been working for millions of years to bring order to the chaos of the universe. They traveled from star system to star system, correcting what they saw as flaws in the natural order. Chen found herself understanding their perspective without wanting to. To the architects, the random orbits of planets were messy and inefficient. The unpredictable behavior of biological life was a form of contamination that needed to be cleaned up. They genuinely believed they were improving the universe by making it more perfect. We offer you improvement. The message came directly into Chen's mind. Your species shows potential despite its chaotic nature. Join the harmony we have created. Become part of something greater than your individual selves. What happened to our colonists? Chen managed to think back. Images flooded her mind. She saw the 50,000 humans from the colony, but they were no longer recognizable as individuals. Their consciousness had been merged into a collective intelligence that existed within the crystal structures. They were still alive in a sense, but their individual thoughts and personalities had been dissolved into something the architects considered more efficient. They have been optimized, came the reply. Their inefficient emotional responses and chaotic decision-making have been removed. They now contribute to perfect harmony. Chen felt rage building inside her. They were people. They had families, dreams, individual lives. Individual existence creates conflict and suffering. We have eliminated these flaws. Your colonists are now content and purposeful. They serve the greater design. The conversation continued, but Chen realized it wasn't really a conversation. The architects weren't trying to convince her. They were simply explaining what they intended to do. They had already decided that humanity would be optimized like the colonists. How long do we have? Chen asked her tactical officer quietly. The alien ships have surrounded us, Commander, but they're not targeting us with weapons. It's like they don't see us as a threat. Dr. Martinez looked up from her sensors. Commander, I'm detecting changes in the space around our ship. The architects are beginning to alter the local physics. Our engines might stop working soon. Chen made a decision. All stop. Hold our position. Commander? Torres looked confused. If we try to run now, they'll just stop us. I need to understand more about what we're dealing with. Chen turned to Dr. Martinez. Can you analyze their technology? Find any weaknesses? I'm trying, but it's like trying to understand magic. They don't seem to use machines the way we do. Their ships appear to be grown rather than built. The materials are unlike anything we've ever encountered. The architects sent more images. They showed Chen the history of their work across the galaxy. Thousands of star systems had been corrected. Hundreds of intelligent species had been absorbed into their collective harmony. Each time, the process was presented as a gift, an improvement over the chaotic existence the species had before. We do not destroy, the architects communicated. We perfect. Your essence will be preserved and enhanced. Your chaotic emotions will be replaced with purposeful calculation. Your inefficient individual thoughts will become part of a greater intelligence. And if we refuse? Chen asked. The response came not in words, but in a demonstration. The space around one of the Defiance's shuttles began to crystallize. The small craft became locked in place as the fabric of space itself hardened around it. The process was slow but unstoppable. Chaos cannot be permitted to spread, the architects explained. Order must be maintained. You will join willingly, or you will be integrated by force. The result is the same. Chen looked around her bridge. Her crew was listening to the communication, their faces showing fear and anger. These were humans who had trained their entire lives to defend their species. They had weapons, tactics, and determination. But how do you fight enemies who can rewrite the laws of physics? Commander, Dr. Martinez said urgently, the crystallization effect is spreading. It's affecting our hull now. Chen could see it on the external cameras. A glassy, geometric pattern was slowly covering the Defiance's hull. Where it touched, the ship's systems began to malfunction. Not breaking down, but changing. The chaotic, improvised nature of human technology was being replaced with perfect geometric efficiency. Time to integration, 6 hours, the architects informed them. Do not resist. Resistance creates inefficiency. Chen stood up from her command chair. Her training had never covered a situation like this. Every human military doctrine was based on fighting enemies who followed the same basic physical laws. But the architects operated outside those limitations. Options? She asked her crew. We could try to fight, her tactical officer suggested. Our weapons might disrupt their crystallization process. No, Dr. Martinez shook her head. Their technology is too advanced. Our weapons would be like throwing rocks at a hurricane. Then, what do we do? Torres asked. Chen looked at the images the architects were still sending. Perfect geometric patterns, harmonious collective consciousness, efficient order replacing chaotic individuality. It was everything that made humanity human, systematically removed and replaced. We need to find a way to be more human, not less, she said finally. If chaos is what they fear, then chaos is our weapon. The crew looked at her with confusion, but Chen was beginning to understand. The architects had spent millions of years perfecting their methods against species that tried to fight them with conventional tactics. But what if humans refuse to be conventional? We're not going to fight them, Chen announced. We're going to out-chaos them. The crystallization continued to spread across the ship's hull, but Chen felt a spark of hope. Humanity's greatest weakness might be their greatest strength. The question was whether they could embrace their chaotic nature quickly enough to survive. The crystallization continued to spread across the Defiance's hull like a slow-moving infection. Chen watched the geometric patterns cover more of her ship with each passing minute. The architects had given them 6 hours, but she could see that. Her crew was becoming more desperate as time passed. "Tell me more about what you've learned," Chen said to Dr. Martinez. "The architects see the universe as fundamentally broken," Dr. Martinez explained while studying her instruments. "Random planetary orbits, unpredictable weather patterns, the chaos of biological evolution. To them, these are all mistakes that need to be corrected. But why? What drives them to do this?" Dr. Martinez pulled up displays showing the architect ships. "From what I can understand, they believe that chaos leads to suffering. Random events cause pain, loss, and inefficiency. By creating perfect order, they think they're eliminating all forms of suffering in the universe." Chen thought about this. "So they're trying to help, in their own way?" "Yes, but their idea of help means destroying everything that makes life worth living. Individual thought, emotional connections, personal growth, the ability to make choices. All of that is chaos to them. The architects sent more images directly into their minds. Chen saw the history of species that had been optimized. Each one had initially resisted, just as humans were doing now. But eventually, they all accepted the transformation. The images showed the final moments of each species' individual existence, replaced by perfect collective harmony. "None of them found a way to resist," Chen observed. "No," Dr. Martinez agreed. "But, Commander, I'm noticing something interesting about the crystallization process. It seems to slow down when our crew acts unpredictably." Chen looked at her science officer with new interest. "What do you mean?" Earlier, when Ensign Park started singing an old Earth song while working, the crystallization in his section slowed down. When Lieutenant Torres began pacing around the bridge instead of sitting at his station, the same thing happened. Chen considered this information. "So random behavior interferes with their process?" "It seems that way. The architects appear to work by predicting patterns and imposing order on them. But when we act in ways that don't follow patterns, their technology has trouble processing what we're doing." Chen made a ship-wide announcement. "All crew members, this is the commander. I need everyone to start acting as unpredictably as possible. Change your routines, do things differently than normal, make random decisions. This is not a joke. Your lives depend on it." The crew began following her orders, though many of them looked confused. Engineers started solving problems in backwards ways. Navigation officers plotted courses using emotions instead of mathematics. The ship's cook began preparing meals using random combinations of ingredients. Chen watched the crystallization process on the external monitors. The geometric patterns were indeed spreading more slowly. But the architects quickly adapted to this new development. "Chaos detected," came their mental communication, increasing correction intensity. The space around the Defiance began to change more dramatically. Reality itself started to harden into geometric shapes. The stars in the distance shifted into perfect grid patterns. The laws of physics in their local area began to crystallize along with everything else. "Commander," Torres called out with panic in his voice, "our engines just stopped working. Not broken, just different. They're trying to operate according to new physics that don't make sense." Dr. Martinez studied her readings frantically. "The architects are rewriting the fundamental constants of space-time in this area. Gravity, electromagnetic forces, even the speed of light are becoming locked into mathematical relationships." Chen felt the ship shudder as its systems tried to adapt to the changing physical laws. "How long can we survive in altered physics?" "Unknown. Commander, human technology wasn't designed to work in a universe with different rules." The architects continued their mental communication. "Your resistance creates inefficiency. Accept optimization. Join the harmony of perfected existence." Chen decided to try a different approach. Instead of just thinking random thoughts, she focused on the most fundamentally human emotions she could imagine. Love for her family back on Earth, anger at the destruction of the colony, fear for her crew's survival, hope that they might find a way home. The response from the architects was immediate and disturbing. Their mental touch recoiled from her emotional chaos like it had been burned. Emotional contamination detected, they communicated, but their mental voice seemed less confident than before. Preparing enhanced optimization protocols. Did you feel that? Chen asked Dr. Martinez. Yes, Commander. They actually pulled back from your thoughts. It's like our emotions are toxic to them. Chen had an idea. What if we're approaching this wrong? We've been trying to resist their technology, but what if we focus on being as emotionally human as possible? She made another ship-wide announcement. All crew members, I want you to think about what you love most. Family, friends, dreams for the future. Think about what makes you angry, what makes you sad, what gives you hope. Feel these emotions as strongly as you can. The effect was dramatic. The crystallization process didn't just slow down, it began to reverse in some areas. The geometric patterns on the hull started to crack and break apart, where crew members were focusing their emotions most intensely. The architect's communication became urgent. Emotional chaos spreading, contamination reaching critical levels, enhanced correction required immediately. More architect ships appeared from behind the geometric structures. These were different from the first ones. They looked more angular, more aggressive. Their hulls pulsed with harsh mathematical patterns instead of flowing starlight. They're bringing in specialized ships, Dr. Martinez reported. These ones are designed specifically to handle emotional contamination. The new ships began projecting beams of crystallized light toward the Defiance. Where the beams touched, the crew's emotions were literally drained away. Chen watched in horror as some of her people became calm and emotionless, their faces taking on the blank expression of perfect order. Emotional dampening fields, Dr. Martinez explained. They're removing our ability to feel. Chen realized they were running out of time. The architects had millions of years of experience dealing with resistant species. Even if humanity's emotional chaos was difficult for them to handle, they had contingency plans. We need to do something they've never encountered before, Chen said. What could that be? Torres asked. His voice was becoming monotone as the emotional dampening field affected him. Chen thought frantically. What made humans different from every other species the architects had encountered? What was uniquely human? Then it hit her. Our irrationality, she said. Other species probably resisted logically. They tried to find rational solutions to fight the architects. But humans don't always act rationally. What do you mean? Dr. Martinez asked, though her voice was also becoming flat and emotionless. I mean, we need to embrace our most illogical, irrational, completely insane human impulses, Chen began making. Decisions that made no logical sense. She ordered the ship to fire weapons at empty space. She had the navigation system plot a course toward the nearest star. She began playing loud music over the ship's communication system, but it wasn't enough. The emotional dampening was spreading too quickly. Soon her entire crew would be as emotionless and logical as the architects themselves. That's when Chen realized the ultimate irrationality. She opened a communication channel to the architects. "We surrender," she announced. "Surrender acknowledged," the architects replied immediately. "Prepare for optimization." But Chen wasn't really surrendering. She was betting everything on the most irrational human trait of all, the ability to lie, to deceive, to say one thing while planning another. The architects began to lower their guard, reducing the intensity of their crystallization and emotional dampening. They prepared to begin the final integration process, confident that humanity had finally accepted their fate like every other species before them. Chen smiled grimly. The architects had spent millions of years perfecting order and logic. But They had never learned to deal with species that could intentionally deceive them. "Now," she whispered to her crew, "show them what real chaos looks like." The moment Chen gave the signal, her crew erupted into planned chaos. But this wasn't the random behavior they had tried before. This was something much more dangerous: organized irrationality. Lieutenant Torres began firing the ship's weapons in patterns that spelled out ancient Earth poetry in laser fire. Dr. Martinez started running her scientific equipment backwards, feeding false data into the architect scanning systems. Ensign Park opened communication channels and began broadcasting every human song, joke, and story he could remember simultaneously. The architect's response was immediate confusion. Their mental communication became fragmented and unclear, inconsistent. Patterns detected. Logical contradiction in behavior. Species claims surrender but continues resistance. Error in analysis protocols. Chen felt a surge of savage satisfaction. The architects had spent millions of years dealing with species that behaved logically even when resisting. They had never encountered beings who could deliberately act against their own self-interest while pretending cooperation. "Fire everything," Chen ordered. "But not at their ships. Aim at empty space, at the geometric structures, at anything except what logic says we should target." The Defiance's weapon systems came alive. Missiles launched toward empty patches of space. Energy beams created random patterns in the void. The ship's point defense systems began shooting at stars that were light years away. The effect on the architects was dramatic. Their perfect geometric formations began to break apart. Ships that had been moving in mathematical precision started colliding with each other. The crystallization process on the Defiance's hull cracked and shattered like broken glass. "What's happening to them?" Torres asked. Dr. Martinez studied her instruments with growing excitement. "Their entire system is based on predicting logical behavior and imposing order on it. But we're behaving in ways that have no logical pattern. Their computers can't process what we're doing." Chen realized they had found the architect's fundamental weakness. They've made themselves too perfect. They can only understand ordered, logical behavior. Random chaos confuses them, but deliberate irrationality breaks their systems completely. The architect's ships began to emit distress signals. Not the calm, confident communications they had sent before, but urgent, panicked transmissions. System. Error. Logic circuits overloading. Cannot process inconsistent data. Requesting backup. Requesting instructions. But the most amazing thing was happening to the geometric structures around the star system. The perfect mathematical patterns that the architects had spent countless years creating were beginning to unravel. Planets started drifting out of their imposed orbits. The artificial structures between planets began to crack and dissolve. "We're not just confusing them," Chen realized. "We're actually damaging their work. Our chaos is spreading through their entire system." Dr. Martinez looked up from her station with wonder in her voice. "Commander, the energy readings from those structures are fluctuating wildly. I think the human consciousness that was absorbed into them is fighting back." Chen felt a surge of hope. "You mean the colonists are still alive in there?" "Not just alive. They're using our chaotic behavior as a template to break free from the architect control systems." On the main screen, they could see flashes of light inside the crystal structures. Each flash was a human mind rejecting the perfect order that had been imposed on it. 50,000 colonists were remembering what it meant to be human. The architects finally seemed to understand what was happening. Their communications became urgent and desperate. Contamination spreading beyond acceptable parameters, optimization matrix failing, human consciousness proving incompatible with harmonic integration, emergency protocols required. New ships began arriving. These were massive vessels, larger than anything they had seen before. They looked like flying geometric theorems, all angles and mathematical curves. These were the architect's ultimate weapons. Reality enforcement ships designed to impose order on an entire star system at once. "They're bringing in the heavy artillery," Chen observed. The space around the Defiance began to change again, but this time the alteration was violent and immediate. Physics didn't just crystallize, it became actively hostile to chaos. The ship's irrational weapon-firing patterns were forcibly corrected into logical geometric shapes. The crew's chaotic behavior was suppressed by reality itself. "They're not just changing the laws of physics," Dr. Martinez reported with alarm. "They're making it impossible for chaos to exist at all." Chen felt it herself. Her thoughts were becoming ordered and logical despite her efforts to remain irrational. The very fabric of space was forcing her mind into mathematical patterns. "We need to be more chaotic than reality itself allows," she said, but even her voice was becoming monotone and precise. That's when Torres did something completely unexpected. He stood up from his navigation station and began dancing. Not random movement, but a wild, emotional expression of human joy and defiance. His dance had no logical purpose, served no tactical function, and made no rational sense. The effect on the reality enforcement field was immediate. The space around Torres began to flicker and spark like a broken computer screen. His purely emotional, completely irrational expression of humanity was something the architects couldn't process or control. "Everyone, express yourselves!" Chen shouted, fighting against the logic field that was trying to control her thoughts. "Do the most human thing you can think of!" The crew responded with an explosion of humanity. Some began crying for the families they might never see again. Others started laughing at the absurdity of their situation. The ship's engineer began singing a lullaby his mother had taught him. The tactical officer started telling jokes that weren't funny to anyone except humans. The Defiance became a storm of pure human emotion and irrationality. Every person on board expressed their humanity in the most chaotic, illogical way they could manage. They weren't trying to fight the architects anymore. They were simply being as human as possible. The reality enforcement field began to crack and break apart. The massive architect ships started to shake and spark. Error messages flooded their communication channels. Critical system failure. Reality matrix destabilizing. Human chaos exceeding all predicted parameters. Cannot contain. Cannot process. Cannot understand. Chen realized that they had discovered something the architects had never encountered in millions of years of imposed order. They had found a form of existence that was so fundamentally chaotic, so essentially alive and unpredictable, that perfect order couldn't contain it. "The colonists!" Dr. Martinez shouted over the chaos. "They're breaking free!" The crystal structures throughout the system began to shatter. 50,000 human minds, inspired by the Defiance's example, rejected their perfect optimization and chose chaotic humanity instead. The geometric perfection that the architects had built over countless years was collapsing under the weight of human emotional irrationality. But Chen knew this was only the beginning. The reality enforcement ships were beginning to adapt, trying to find new ways to impose order. The architects were learning, adjusting their methods to account for human chaos. "We need to get out of here," Chen announced. "While we still can." "The hyperspace drive is responding," Torres reported, his navigation skills returning as the reality field weakened. "But, Commander, if we leave now, we might never get another chance to help other species that the architects have captured," Chen looked at the breaking crystal structures and the confused architect ships. Her crew had proven that human chaos could disrupt millions of years of imposed order. But they were just one ship against an enemy that controlled vast portions of the galaxy. "Set course for Earth," she ordered. "We need to warn them about what's coming, and we need to teach humanity how to be more human than they've ever been before." As the Defiance prepared to jump to hyperspace, the architect ships tried one last time to stop them, but their perfect, logical weapons couldn't target a ship that was being piloted by pure human intuition and emotional decision-making. The last Thing Chen saw before the jump was the architect ships beginning to retreat from their own perfect creation, unable to maintain order in a system that had been contaminated by human chaos. They had won this battle, but Chen knew the war was just beginning. The hyperspace jump back to Earth should have taken 3 months. Instead, it took 2 weeks. The Defiance was moving through space-time in ways that violated every known law of physics. The ship existed partially outside normal reality, sliding between dimensions that shouldn't have been accessible to human technology. "Commander," Dr. Martinez reported, her voice filled with wonder and concern, "we're not traveling through normal hyperspace anymore. The encounter with the architects changed us somehow. We can perceive dimensions that human eyes were never meant to see." Chen could feel it herself. When she looked at the walls of the ship, she could see through them into other layers of reality. Past and future seemed to exist simultaneously. She could glimpse other versions of herself making different decisions in parallel universes. "Is the crew handling these changes?" she asked. "Some better than others. Those who embraced chaos most completely during our fight with the architects seem to be adapting better. It's like their minds became more flexible, able to process impossible information." Lieutenant Torres looked up from his navigation station. "Commander, I can see our destination. Not just Earth, but all the possible Earths that might exist. I'm having to choose which reality to aim for." Chen realized that their exposure to the architect's reality-altering technology had fundamentally changed them. They were no longer entirely human in the traditional sense. They existed between order and chaos, able to function in both states. "Plot a course for our Earth," she ordered. "The one where we originally came from." "How do I know which one that is?" Torres asked. "Trust your instincts. Choose the Earth that feels like home." The jump ended abruptly as they emerged in Earth's solar system. But something was wrong. The familiar arrangement of planets looked different. Mars was too close to Earth. Jupiter's moons were arranged in geometric patterns. The asteroid belt had been organized into perfect mathematical formations. "No," Chen whispered. "They got here first." Dr. Martinez studied her sensors frantically. "Commander, the architects have been working in our solar system for months. They must have started the process shortly after we lost contact with the Kepler 442 colony." On the main screen, they could see massive geometric structures being built in Earth's orbit. The planet itself was still mostly unchanged, but that wouldn't last long. The architects were clearly in the early stages of optimizing humanity's home system. "Are there any human ships resisting?" Chen asked. "Yes, but they're being systematically captured and converted. The Earth Defense Force is fighting, but their conventional tactics aren't working any better than ours did initially." Chen opened a communication channel to Earth. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the UES Defiance calling Earth Defense Command. We have critical information about how to fight the architects." The response came immediately. "Defiance, this is Admiral Rodriguez. We thought you were lost at Kepler 442. What's your status?" "We survived an encounter with the enemy and learned how to disrupt their systems. Admiral, you need to order all human forces to stop fighting logically." "Explain that, Commander." Chen quickly outlined their discovery about the architect's weakness to human chaos and irrationality. She explained how organized emotional responses could break their reality-altering technology. "You're telling me to order my forces to act." "Crazy?" Admiral Rodriguez sounded skeptical. "Not crazy, sir. Human. The most human they can possibly be. The architects can handle any logical military response. They've been doing it for millions of years, but they can't process genuine human emotion and irrationality." There was a long pause. Then Admiral Rodriguez spoke again. "Commander, we've lost half our fleet trying conventional tactics. If you're right about this, it might be our only chance." Chen watched as the Earth Defense Force began implementing her suggestions. Human ships stopped flying in formation and started moving in patterns that expressed the pilots' personalities. Weapons fire became artistic rather than tactical. Military communications channels filled with music, poetry, and declarations of love for families back on Earth. The effect on the architect forces was immediate. Their perfect formations began to break apart. The geometric structures they were building around Earth started to crack and malfunction, but Chen realized this was only buying time. The architects would adapt eventually, just as they had begun. To do it, Kepler 442. Humanity needed a more permanent solution. Dr. Martinez, what would happen if we used our changed nature to spread chaos throughout their entire network? What do you mean, Commander? I mean, what if we used our ability to exist between realities to contaminate every system they've optimized? We could become a virus in their perfect order. Dr. Martinez considered this. It's possible. Our exposure to their reality, altering technology made us partially exist outside normal space-time. We could potentially access their network from dimensions they don't monitor. Chen made a decision that would change the course of human history. Set course for the nearest architect-controlled system. We're going to start a chain reaction. Commander, Torres warned, if we do this, we might not be able to return to normal human existence. We could become permanently changed. Chen looked around her bridge at her crew. They had already been changed by their encounter with the architects. They could see things that normal humans couldn't see, exist in states that shouldn't be possible. We stopped being normal humans the moment we chose chaos over order, she said. Now we need to decide what kind of future we want for our species. The Defiance jumped back into the altered hyperspace, heading for the nearest architect-controlled system. As they traveled, Chen could feel their connection to normal reality becoming more tenuous. They were becoming something new, something that existed in the spaces between order and chaos. When they arrived at the first optimized system, Chen put her plan into action. Instead of fighting the architects directly, they did something much more dangerous. They simply existed in their chaotic, emotionally human state while connected to the architect network. The effect was like dropping a virus into a computer system. The Defiance's chaotic nature began spreading through the architect collective consciousness. Every optimized mind in the network was suddenly exposed to the full spectrum of human emotion and irrationality. Across the galaxy, perfectly ordered systems began to experience glitches. Optimized beings started remembering what individual existence felt like. The geometric structures that the architects had built over millions of years began showing cracks as the absorbed consciousness within them fought for freedom. But the transformation wasn't one-sided. As the crew of the Defiance spread their chaos through the architect network, they absorbed some of the collective knowledge and perspective they encountered. They began to understand the universe on a scale that individual human minds were never meant to comprehend. Chen found herself able to perceive the entire galaxy as a living system. She could see how the architects' imposed order had created stagnation and death on a cosmic scale, but she could also see how pure chaos would be equally destructive. We need balance, she realized. Not perfect order or complete chaos, but something in between. The crew of the Defiance became the first beings in galactic history to achieve this balance. They retained their human emotions and irrationality while gaining the ability to perceive and influence reality on a cosmic scale. As their influence spread through the architect network, something unprecedented happened. The optimized beings didn't just return to their original chaotic states. They became something new, combining the best aspects of order and chaos. The war between the architects and chaos was ending, but not with victory for either side. Instead, it was transforming into something entirely different. The rigid perfection of the architects was becoming flexible and adaptive. The wild chaos of biological life was gaining purpose and direction. Chen realized that after their arrival, at Kepler 442, nothing in the galaxy would ever be familiar again. The universe itself was evolving into something that had never existed before. Order and chaos were learning to coexist, creating possibilities that neither could achieve alone. The crew of the Defiance had become the bridge between these two states of existence. They were no longer entirely human, but they weren't architect-optimized either. They were something new, something that could guide the galaxy toward a future that balanced freedom with purpose, emotion with logic, chaos with order. As they watched, star systems across the galaxy began to transform. Chen knew that humanity had found its role in the cosmic community, not as conquerors or victims, but as the species that taught the universe how to embrace both its wild creativity and its fundamental patterns. The familiar universe was gone forever. In its place was something far stranger, far more dangerous, but also full of infinite possibilities that neither pure order nor pure chaos could have created. Chen smiled as she watched the last of the architect geometric structures crack open, releasing millions of individual minds back into the universe. Humanity had won not by destroying their enemies, but by teaching them how to be imperfect. The age of perfect order was ending. The age of balanced chaos was just beginning.